Welcome to the Ready Room podcast by TBR Gunworks. My name is Josh, the owner of TBR Gunworks, and I'm here with my very pregnant co-host slash wife. Introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I am Caroline. I am the very pregnant co-host and wife.
Good introduction. Very, very thorough and clear. Very accurate. So a little introduction, since this is our very first episode, and I'm hoping that this podcast will interest a lot of people based on the different firearm topics we plan on covering. We're going to do some gunsmithing episodes that are, kind of more focused towards hobbyists or people looking to get into the gunsmithing world. We're going to cover shooting. We might do some reviews of some things over time, but it's going to be a big variety podcast of different firearm related topics, not just gunsmithing and not just what we're going to talk about today, which is kind of just like a list. But my name is Josh. I've been gunsmithing professionally for a while now. I'm a big time shooter. I've been passionate about firearms my entire life. All I've done for fun, even as I was a kid, was research firearm stuff, which was just the weirdest thing as like a 12-year-old to sit on your computer and read historical facts about firearms, which doesn't seem fun, but it was really exciting when I was a kid. I was like, ooh, today I'm going to learn about the PPSH 41 because that's cool. Caroline, would you mind introducing yourself a little bit?
Yeah, I did not do that. I played outside and played video games and did none of those things until we started dating, and then he dragged me into this expensive hobby, so that's where we are.
That's a big fact. It's definitely an expensive hobby. So Caroline, being not a new gun user, we've been married for almost 8 years now, and she's been into firearms ever since we were dating, but she's not been like this passionate, avid competition shooter or anything like that. She shoots, she finds it fun. She's very safe, a firearm owner. She conceal carries like she's supposed to. That's your job. And, but she's going to offer a different point of view with the podcast, because I notice a lot of podcasts, they will have just straight up experts on both sides of the table, and it gets kind of thick in the detail. And I think a lot of new firearm users feel a little lost in the sauce sometimes because, well, they'll be listening to this podcast and people start talking about the very, let's just say, detailed mechanisms of a direct impingement versus a piston AR, for example, which isn't that difficult. But
I'm here to ask the dumb questions.
Well, yeah. She's here to ask questions and bring a point of view that is not your firearms expert. It's someone that might be hearing this and go, what are they talking about? And that way, if I get, sucked into the detail and I'm going off on a tangent, she can ask the questions that I may not even remember to answer because I already know these things. I'm already neck deep in firearms for 20-something years. So today's episode, I think, is a really fun one. It's 5 underappreciated calibers, or cartridges. We're just going to say cartridges. And it doesn't mean these cartridges are never used. It just means they're definitely not mainstream. And that's for a couple different reasons. We have some possible criteria for a cartridge being considered underrated. And I think we can go ahead and start with that right now. One of the possible criteria for being underrated is just being relatively unknown in the mainstream firearms world. Like if someone just hasn't even heard of the cartridge. Like I haven't met anyone who's never heard of 223 or 9mm.
Yeah, a couple of these I hadn't heard of until you said you wanted to do this podcast.
Yeah. So that's all but one of these, or I'd say all but 2 of these, are definitely relatively unknown. One is not being particularly popular in a role that it excels at. So even if it's a known cartridge, I think some of these cartridges are not known for a specific role that they are really, really good at, but people don't think about them in that role for whatever reason. And we'll get into that later on, especially with one cartridge in particular. Another possible criteria is not being considered worth the effort due to the higher cost of ammunition, despite the performance being spectacular in a specific role or environment.
So that makes sense if somebody's like practicing and they're not wanting to spend that kind of money.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You don't want to sit there and like. If I owned a 50 BMG, which I don't, please sponsor me. Literally anyone who makes a 50 BMG, I'll take it. I would not be target shooting that every week, even before the 2020 ammo apocalypse.
Yeah.
And another, the last criteria I'm giving for this list that is something to be considered when we're talking about underrated is they're overshadowed by newer cartridges. So maybe they're really, really good at something, but the hype from newer cartridges tends to overshadow them. And I think the first one doesn't fall under that category, but it does fall under a couple of those categories that we brought up earlier. Caroline, have you ever heard of 325 Winchester short mag?
No. Not before you gave me the script.
Have you ever heard of Winchester short mags in general?
Yes.
Because there's a couple of them.
Yeah.
There's probably, I think there's like, if I'm remembering correctly, there's like 6 to 8 of them, I believe. I could be wrong.
Yeah, but the 325 specifically, no.
No. I hadn't either until last year. And I was working at a gun shop that had a Browning A-bolt, and the original Browning A-bolt, not the newer productions, that was chambered in 325 Winchester short mag.
So I'm assuming that's a bolt action.
It was a bolt action, yes. Yeah, the Browning A-bolt's a really nice older bolt action. The originals are really good bolt actions. They're actually really highly sought after. Originals are going for, before the apocalypse of 2020, they were going for a pretty good amount of money. I was seeing them go for over $1,000 in really good condition, and they weren't that anywhere near that price.
Seems like a lot of older Browning stuff is
Browning A5s, the semi-automatic shotguns are really high. And it's just because they're becoming collectibles and people like the actions of them or whatever reason. But this particular Browning A-bolt was chambered in 325 Winchester short mag. And I never heard of it, so I did some research into it. And I understood why I'd never heard of it, and it's because it was the largest diameter Winchester short mag cartridge that they made. And so it's actually 0.323 of an inch, not 0.325. But companies love...
Naturally.
Yeah, naturally, right? I mean, that's just... Why wouldn't you know that?
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's because companies love to mislabel their ammunition to whatever they think sounds better.
See, that helps because, you have so many different types of measurements for ammo. So why wouldn't you just make up a number?
Yeah, not only do you have to learn the metric measurements for cartridges and the, what do we use, Imperial? Is that what's actually called as Imperial? Standard. Let's just call it Standard. You don't have to learn both of those. You also have to learn, is it truly 325? No, it's not. It's 323 or 8.2 millimeters. And they introduced it as this 8 millimeter cartridge, which not the most popular bullet diameter in North America. It had its time for popularity at one point for hunting, and it's actually very, very good at hunting. 8 millimeter in general is usually very solid for taking down game in North America. But in the early 2000s, when it came out, it wasn't that popular. And 325 Winchester short mag, which is just a mouthful, just a big, big mouthful, has a really wide range of projectiles and bullet weights going from like 125 grain on like the light end to 250 grain on the heavier end. The velocities are, I got some written down here. I'm taking averages from companies' websites because they're the ones making the ammunition. I'm not chronographing this stuff, guys. I can't afford to shoot 20 different brands of 325 Winchester short mag, especially now. Once again, even before the gun apocalypse, these things were, I mean, it was like $50 for a box of ammo for 20 rounds, and that's one of those things where I understand why it's not a very well-known cartridge, but that also ties into why it's expensive, but we'll get back to that. But anyways, the velocities were between 2,000 feet per second, 2,000 feet a second. Same thing.
Yeah.
To a little over 3,000. Now, this is all based on certain cartridges. Certain projectile weights go a little faster or a little slower. But the muzzle energy is outlandish, going from mid to high 3,000 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. So it's got a lot of momentum, mass, velocity. It's slinging pretty good.
It's hefty.
It's hefty, yeah. And depending on the choice of projectile you're using, whether it's a full metal jacket or in what you would like to use for large game, open tip boat tails or soft tips, whatever you're going to use for the game you're hunting, that muzzle energy is really, really important. If you're trying to take out large game at 500, 600 yards, you need good muzzle energy, but you need it to carry that muzzle energy further than 100 yards.
Right.
A lot of cartridges that people use for hunting are really, really good at 100, and then at 250, they're garbage.
Right.
Like 30-30. So everyone who likes to tell me they can make a 300-yard shot on a deer with a 30-30, you probably shouldn't. I doubt you can make the shot in the first place since it drops like a rock after like 150 yards. But I doubt that you should be doing that. But this thing is really good. Like 325 Winchester short mag, it still has around 2,000 foot-pounds of energy at 500 yards, which is right above what you need for a lot of large game. There's kind of this ratio people have, and I forget the exact measurements. I think you're wanting between 1,700 and 2,000 foot-pounds of energy for elk. That's like the rule of thumb kind of thing.
Yeah.
And this thing is sitting slightly above that at 500 yards, which is really, really good. So a lot of people like to take like 6.5 Creedmoor and stuff shooting, and it's really fast.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good long-range cartridge, but its muzzle energy is not that good past like I think 250, 300 yards. So this thing's better at taking out large game at a distance, and not everyone needs to be hunting at 1,000 yards. Consider 500 yards long distance for hunting. Let's just safe and ethical shooters, guys, when you're hunting. But it's not a great cartridge for small deer. Like the whitetail we have here, and a lot of places have smaller mule deer. This thing's going to tear it up.
Yeah.
It's going to cause a lot of damage. Probably going to ruin a lot of meat, and it might even go through your target. And, you got to be aware of what's beyond your target. But a lot of people go out west for elk. They go up to the northwest for moose and stuff. I mean, I'd like to. Once again, sponsor me. But so this Browning A-bolt, I was really impressed by. It was like a really big, comfortable stock too. It was a little sticky. It was one of those old camo jobs, and it was tacky.
Yeah.
Like just the stock. But I was like, man, why has anyone bought this? And they were only selling it for $800. And after I kept trying to sell it, I was like, do you guys want this? Because like I don't know why no one's buying this. It's less than $1,000 and it's a Browning A-bolt. Like, what's the issue? Every single customer that I asked, every single one that I asked if he was interested in this, he's like, man, this is an awesome rifle. And he'd hold it for 5 minutes and just, feel it and run the bolt and feel the trigger. I'm like, man, this thing's amazing. What caliber is it in? And I'd be like,
caliber?
325 WSM. And he's like, all right, cool, you can take this back. And I'm like, what is wrong with you people? And they're always like, it kicks too much. I'm like, what? No, it kicks too much. That sentence doesn't make sense to me. It kicks too much. Have you shot a 50? Yes. Did it kick too much? No. Why would this kick too much? You're not shooting 17 rounds at a deer. You only need one or hopefully one shot. Some people have to take two. But you only want one good shot? Why do you care if it kicks a lot? Have you ever shot a skeletonized stock 30-06? Kicks like a dang mule. And I was really blown away by people's decision. Just
It was probably either that or just the price of the ammo that they just didn't want to pay for.
The ammo was pricey. It was like $50 for a box of 20 rounds.
You're like, oh.
But that's because no one buys it.
Yeah, like this is a great gun, but this ammo's $50.
Yeah.
Let's not put all that money into it.
If people would actually get into a lot of these Wildcats, the price would drop. Now, once again, this is all considering that it is not the gun apocalypse of 2020.
Yeah.
It would drop in price because production would go up, supply would go up. I mean, that's the issue with a lot of these cartridges. Is there's cartridges that have been around for 10 years, and then they get really popular, and then the price gets cut in half over the course of a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
We're already seeing, no, we're not, because gun apocalypse. But before the ammo crisis, we were already seeing 6.5 millimeter PRC drop in price because of SHOT Show 2020. A lot of companies come out with new rifles chambered in that, and it wasn't as rare, and it started to drop in price. But then it immediately skyrocketed shortly after. So, not the best example.
Yeah.
But I think people should, whenever things calm down, if they ever do, which there's no guaranteeing that it will, I really think people should give the 325 WSM a look if they're planning on going out and doing some big game hunting. At let's just say anything past 250. I think this is past 250 within 500 yards. I think this is obviously within 252, but I mean a lot of cartridges can do the job at 250, 200, 150 yards.
Yeah.
But if you're not sure, if you want to make sure you can be good out to 500, I think this is a really good cartridge to take a look at. The performance is really, really nice. You see a pretty big variety of projectiles and options, which is key when you're trying to select and test what you want to use. I think it's overlooked and underrated. Hey, I did the thing.
You did the thing.
I did the thing. Do you want to do a pistol cartridge or another rifle cartridge?
Let's do a pistol cartridge.
You can do a pistol cartridge?
Shake it up.
Okay. Will you read the first pistol cartridge for me?
I will not.
You will not?
Is
okay.
it-
It's not.
is
It's not the one right after 325 Winchester short mag.
No. I was gonna say, is it 357 SIG?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
I think a lot of people just heard us say 357 SIG and are like, that's not underrated. Look, what do you mean it's underrated? I've heard of that. Therefore, it can't be underrated. Or I carry that. Therefore, it can't be underrated. Hold your horses. I have my reasons. 357 SIG has had a pretty rocky history. It's been up and down for, I'd say, the past 5, maybe 6 years. It's been up and down in popularity. It kind of got really, really interesting when it first came out, and then the interest dropped by a pretty substantial margin. And this is just what I've seen in the market, what I've seen talking to people and the communities around me. Maybe your area is different, that's fine. But in my area, I saw a big drop in interest for 357 SIG for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had that shooting in Texas. Remember that?
Yeah.
Was that last year at the church?
2019, I think.
Was it 2019?
Maybe.
It might be. Is it? So it was either early. No, you're right. I think it was 2019. The Texas church. It was a shooting where I think someone was unfortunately killed. Besides the shooter, I think
Yeah.
the man, I think it was like a deacon, shot him.
I don't think anybody was killed.
No, one of the church members was killed for sure. Maybe
Oh.
2. And then
I didn't remember anybody dying besides the shooter.
yeah, the
but-
shooter got shot. So anyways, I feel bad. I can't remember when this actually took place. I thought it was last year, but we're at the end of 2020, and it feels like
It's 2021 now.
yeah, exactly. So what do I know?
I'm pretty sure it was in 2019.
Okay, you could be right.
I could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, the man who defended the church
Mhm.
was using a SIG 229 in 357 SIG. So this cartridge comes out in the 90s. Doesn't have the biggest like following. It has like a small cult following for a couple of years, but not the biggest following. Then when that shooting happens in Texas, I saw a massive boom in interest for 357 SIG chambered handguns. And a lot of people didn't even know that a good majority of the 40 Smith & Wesson handguns, maybe not a majority, but a good bit of the 40 Smith & Wesson chambered handguns can be converted to 357 SIG through a simple barrel swap.
Mhm.
Let's get into some of the stats before we go into that. So it's a bottlenecked pistol cartridge, which means it's not straight walled.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So there's a couple different bottleneck cartridges. It's normally a rifle design
Yeah.
for the casing, as opposed to a straight wall casing like most pistol cartridges. So the parent case, the case is based off of, is a 10 millimeter cartridge or casing, and it's necked down to 357, quote unquote. There's a lot of air quotes for people who listen to audio. I don't know if it's actually 357, but a lot of 357 things are not actually 357. So that's hit or miss. I probably should pull some calipers out and go measure one. So it's a necked down.
Do you have any?
I might, because we used to own a Glock. We used to own a Glock. No, it was a SIG. It was a SIG 40 Smith & Wesson.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't remember a Glock.
No, we did own a Glock 17 Gen 2 back in 2015. I owned it for like 2 months, and I got rid of that. Yeah. But no, there was a SIG that I had that was 40, and I was considering switching it to 357 SIG. And this is back in 2015, maybe 2016 at the latest. And I was considering 357 SIG. So we might have some of that ammo laying around, but I need to go measure that. Because, so the whole reason they designed this is they wanted to simulate the performance of a 125 grain 357 Magnum cartridge from a, I think it was a 4-inch revolver. But they wanted that performance out of a semi-automatic handgun as opposed to a revolver, right? And allowing the barrel swap with a lot of handguns to let you just have a 40 Smith & Wesson, change the barrel, and have a 357 SIG, it's really interesting. I see what they were, I mean, I see why some of these companies do this, but it actually does perform pretty well when you look at what they wanted versus what they actually got. So it maintains a higher muzzle energy than heavier projectiles in 40 Smith & Wesson on average, and including velocity. So velocity and muzzle energy are higher than comparable heavier projectiles in 40 Smith & Wesson. Mm-hmm. Normally you don't see you kind of see the opposite. Velocities can be wonky, but your muzzle energy, the heavier, as long as you have good propellant and it's not like a light recoil load or whatever, you tend to see really, really good energy out of heavier projectiles because it's that mass that's moving, right? So it's really funny to see 40 Smith & Wesson having heavier projectiles but perform worse. And I found such a wide variety of ammunition, I couldn't really get an average for the velocities and energy. I probably could have if I got a calculator out and really tried hard. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to try that hard. It's a lot of math because there were so many different cartridges, which is good. I mean, it's good to have variety. But so what I also did find, though, while I was researching, was a lot of people who tested it say that they were finding similar or slightly less felt recoil than 40 Smith & Wesson. So if you've got a handgun that's a 40 Smith & Wesson and you're thinking about switching it to 357 SIG permanently.
I'd actually like to see one of these.
You want to see it? Yeah, Google 357
I've
SIG.
just been thinking about a pistol round
it's neck down.
That's got a bottleneck cartridge, and it's
not a huge neck. It's not like a 5.7 and all that stuff where it's like really sharp. But if you think about, if you have a 40 Smith & Wesson and you're considering carrying 357 SIG, once again, for every one of these cartridges, please.
Oh, okay. It's just like a little baby.
Yeah. Please ignore the fact that we're in the gun apocalypse. I know I've said it like 5 times. Ignore the fact that ammo is through the roof right now because, I mean, even 9mm is impossible to find. So me talking about 357 SIG probably sounds outlandish to even buy, but just hear the logic out, and then if the ammo prices ever come back to normal, you can actually put the logic into effect versus just hearing it. If you have a 40 Smith & Wesson handgun that can convert to a 357 SIG and you're considering doing it, but you're not sure, you're either going to have the same or slightly less felt recoil in the hand, once again, depending on cartridges, cartridge choice, projectile, whatever. You're going to hold similar amount of ammo. I'd say similar. It might be slightly less, but it's probably, on average, it's probably very similar. Better performance, both energy and velocity, on average, once again. Because there's some guy right now typing, he's like, no, my 30, I got double charge loads, okay? They do twice the speed, but I blow up every gun I put them in. Don't know why. Can't explain it. On average, you're getting better performance. You're getting less recoil. Why would you not?
Yeah.
Why would you not? Like, why would you not make it 357 SIG?
And if it's just a barrel swap.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah.
You could just do that yourself.
Easily.
You know?
You're getting better performance.
Yeah.
The same recoil. It's not like you're going from 40 to 10 mil.
Yeah.
Which is also a correct change to make in your life. It's not a huge difference, but you're getting better performance. You're getting better ballistic performance, which is what's important.
Right.
So I don't see why you wouldn't switch to 357 SIG. And the reason I think 357 SIG is underrated is because up until very recently, most people hadn't heard of it. Most, like your average shooters, had not heard of 357 SIG, and if they had, they didn't know what it was. I met a lot of people who thought 357 SIG was just another revolver cartridge. And I was like, no. But it's not their fault. It just didn't catch fire.
Yeah.
Now, once again.
See, I had heard of it, but I hadn't.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard 357 SIG, but,
Yeah.
like, I've never.
Well, once the shooting
Paying
happened
attention to
in
it.
Texas, it kind of got a lot more interest because people actually, I don't know why people like this, but they were like, oh, someone actually shot someone with it and it worked. Cool. Now I'll look into it.
Yeah.
What do you think was going to happen?
I don't know.
I mean, I get it though.
Like, that always happens, but, like, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
It's still interesting though. I don't own a 357 SIG gun right now, but that's also partly because I no longer own any guns that were 40s or are 40s. That's not the only reason to have a 357 SIG, but it was the only reason I had one back in the day. I do want one. I haven't decided what handgun I want in 357 SIG though. I think it'd be really interesting to have a 1911 in 357 SIG.
You just like 1911.
I love 1911s. That's me. Not a fanboy. I did say I hate Glock earlier though, so that's not going to look good. It's not going to. The math's not going to add up.
I mean, the Glock thing is not so much the guns themselves
It's the people.
as it is the people and.
It's you. To some Glock fanboy who's going to hear this someday.
The ones that have Glock stickers on their car.
Yeah, like 30 Glock stickers. Like they put every Glock sticker they get with their new Glock.
Yeah,
They have like
it's just free
14 Glock
advertising.
19s. They're all the same gun, but they love them so much they can't stop buying the Glock 19.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, don't forget the 19X. Yeah, got to have that. Got to have 4 of those.
Yeah.
Yep.
For sure.
And then about 300 mags per gun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Glock guys.
And all aftermarket stuff too.
Oh, it's not even a Glock at that point. You just got like
exactly.
$700 worth of Zev parts in just the slide.
Mm-hmm.
But no, Glock perfection.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you don't need aftermarket parts.
Nah.
But the gun is basically entirely aftermarket. I'm gonna get a lot of hate for that one. That's okay. We'll have an entire episode dedicated
Whatever.
to Glock.
It'll just have more views for the video.
Yeah.
He said, "What about Glocks?"
Please hate me more. Hate me more. Hate me and my anti-Glock views more. I am fueled by your hatred. I'm gonna get copyright strike for that one. You quoted, what is that, Rick and Morty?
No, that was
That's not Rick and Morty saying I am fueled by your hatred.
No.
Okay, I thought it was.
Is it Parks and Rec?
It is.
Yeah.
It's that dude who loves being the crazy guy. I love that man. He's so funny. All right, so the next cartridge we have, this is our third cartridge, is 22-250, which is not at all an unknown cartridge.
No.
But I would wager that it's underrated. Big time. So everyone that I've met that either owns a 22-250 or says they want to own a 22-250, I ask them why. Right? Like, what do you do with it? I don't know. I haven't shot it in 10 years. Half of them, easily half of them, and I am one of that half, was gifted that gun from a family member. Like a grandfather or a dad or a brother gifted them the 22-250. Only about half of the ones that I met actually bought the 22-250 for themselves.
Yeah.
It's really, I think it had a much bigger following back in the day. A while back. It had a bigger following. And it's a really, really good varmint gun.
Yeah.
It's good at small game. I met a lot of guys who shoot prairie dogs. Like, because they dig holes, break cows' legs and stuff.
Yeah.
They step in the hole,
Because it's just
a hole.
tunnels under the ground.
Exactly.
And
And they apparently carry, is it the plague or leprosy? No, armadillos carry leprosy, right?
some do.
Yeah. Well, the prairie dogs, they carry, I think it's the plague. I think they carry the black plague.
Is
Not
it the
all of them. Yeah, I think it's the plague. Almost positive. I mean, you can look it up.
Google, let's see.
Yeah. So I've met guys who go out there and they shoot 500 yards. They're shooting prairie dogs, which is, guys, that's like the size of my water bottle. I mean, that's tiny at 500 yards. And they're just knocking them down. I mean, one of my instructors back when I went to school, he was one of the machining instructors. He was a bench rest competition target shooter. And he shot 500 yards, killed
They
over. They do have the plague?
So they have a bacteria that causes the plague. So, like, the rats did. Like, when something else ate them or when fleas or ticks got off of them and onto something else, then it infected them.
There it is.
That makes sense.
So that's what people
I
kill
just
them.
had to. I wasn't sure about that. I had to look.
You had to know?
You
You had to know? You didn't believe? You didn't trust me?
No, I mean,
Yeah.
just the plague. Just
I mean,
had
it's a
to-
scary thing. Like, oh, these prairie dogs carry the plague.
Yeah, but I just had to.
Sounds like a conspiracy theory.
It does. Had
But
to
it's
make
not.
sure.
Oh, I said conspiracy. Time to get banned from YouTube. Got 6 followers? Oh, man, you said conspiracy theory. Got to kick you off. What was I saying? Oh.
I was stuck on the plague thing.
Yeah, I know.
don't
I know. So one of my awesome instructors was shooting prairie dogs at 500 yards with his own custom bench rest target gun. And they killed like over 100 in one weekend, or over 200. It was some outlandish number. I didn't believe him. And he showed me pictures. I was like, oh, my God, he did. They were just laying them down all weekend. But I started thinking about it, and if you're not going to the extremes, because most people can't hit a target that small at 500 yards, but you got some property, you got some varmint pests that you need to deal with, 22-250 is the go-to. I'm telling you guys. So let's start with some nice, cute information, right? Some like statistics.
Kawaii.
What? Did you just bring weeb
I
stuff
did.
into this room?
I did indeed.
This is the ready room, not the weeb room.
There's weeb stuff right there.
No, there's not. That's Star Wars. You watch your mouth.
There's not anime beside.
Nope. Don't even know what anime is. What's anime? So, from all the projectiles I've seen, this is just me. If you found some special cartridge somewhere else, that's cool. I've only seen from 35 grains to the heaviest being 70 grain. I've heard of 90s. I've never seen 90s. I don't think 90s exist, but I could be wrong.
So just kind of off topic, real quick, because you've explained this to me before.
Okay.
But my brain has just erased the information. The
As it
grain
does. The grain.
is that the weight of the powder?
That's the weight of the projectile.
Okay.
Just the bullet, right? It's
Okay.
just the bullet. And you know what? While we're on that topic, you brought this up earlier, and I forgot to touch on it. So she brought up that you have to learn 2 different kinds of measuring for cartridges: metric
was
and
3.
imperial.
I thought there was one more.
I mean, there's like shotguns, which is a whole nother beast. We'll have to do an
well, yeah.
episode on shotgun gauge. That's
But-
nonsense.
I thought there was like a
There's-
UN.
It's metric.
Oh, okay.
like
so
NATO
it's
and UN
not,
all use
yeah, like
metric.
it's just metric.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, for those of you who don't know, who are new to firearms and are a little confused when you see different types of measurements, like one will say .308, let's say, and then one will say 7.62 by 5.1, and you're like, well, what's the difference? And the guy at the shop tells you, oh, they're the exact same thing. Okay, yes and no. When you see a number followed by an X, so by, and then another number. So let's use 7.62 by 5.1 millimeter as an example. The first number is the diameter of the projectile. So the diameter of the bullet itself, not the entire cartridge, just the bullet. 7.62 diameter projectile by 51 millimeter case length. That's the length of the case, okay? And it gets confusing when you hear someone say, I'm shooting 7.62. It's like, okay, but which one? Because there's like 8 different 7.62s. So when you hear someone say 308, which, by the way, 0.308 of 1 inch diameter bullet. So 30-06? No, that's not a good example. That's not what it is. 30-06 is just 30 caliber 1906. That's where that came from. But 308 is 7.62 diameter bullet, but it's imperial instead of metric. So it's 0.308 of 1 inch. 50 cal. 0.50 of an inch.
Yeah.
Right? It's a half-inch diameter bullet. That's basically what it boils down to. And when you hear someone say 308 and 7.62 by 5.1 are the same, technically their measurements are almost identical. They're not identical.
Several that are basically the same.
Yeah, 223 and 556, 308 and 7.62 by 5.1. Now, but the measurements are not completely identical. Okay, they're so close that most people would never know, never have any issues, not a big deal. The pressures are different. So with 556 and 223, which are considered the same thing, 556 has slightly higher pressures when they're fired than 223. So it's only long-term safe to fire 556 in 556. If you fire in a 223 gun, you have throat erosion and you have a lot of wear and tear over time because of the higher pressure loads.
Mm-hmm.
But the other way around, 223 and a 556, it's fine. 308 is the opposite. the 7.62 by 5.1 actually has lower pressure than the 308. It's interesting because it's considered like the civilian, measurement versus NATO measurement. So
Right.
military versus it's not, and that's not entirely true either. But it's one of those things where you would think that the military loads would have higher pressure, and in fact they do not. So back to 22-250, which is a 22 diameter bullet with necked down from a old 250 casing. So that's not a fair measurement either because that's different. That's a 250 casing. There's so much to this stuff, and I feel bad because I thought I was going to make a nice, clean explanation, and it's not.
Joke's on you.
And I don't want to spend 25, 30 minutes just explaining measurements. We might do an episode just on that where I can be a little more detailed. We need to do an entire episode just on shotgun shells because that's nutty. I had to be explained what that was like 7 times. And I was like, I don't believe you. Because what you're saying does not make sense. And I'll save that for later. But 22-250. So 35 grain.
Like the smaller the number, the bigger the shell.
Okay. Well, that's okay. If we're gonna do this.
Well, no, I mean because like that's usually how.
What's different?
Like
so shotgun shells. When you hear gauge, yes, the smaller the number, the bigger the bore.
Yeah.
Right. But how they do that, and how they got those measurements. And it's nonsense.
Okay.
I mean, it is the most ridiculous stuff I've ever heard. I was like, you can't, like, you're not serious. I was talking to my head gunsmith director. I was like, you're not serious. You're joshing me right now. What you're saying is just not true. And it doesn't. I guess it may not sound that ridiculous, but when you really think about the fact that some grown men came up with this and didn't think of anything better, it's just outrageous. But once again, we'll get to that later. I'm sure you can Google that and have a good laugh for yourself. Because at first you'll be confused, then you'll be a little angry because it doesn't make any sense, and you're gonna laugh. That's like the grieving process. Oops. So 35 grain projectiles to 70 grain projectiles in 22-250. It is hands down one of the fastest cartridges out there. It is outrageous. So we talked about 325 Winchester short mag, right? And it was you were able to get some loads that were pushing a little over 2,000. Feet per second velocities, right? For 22-250, I have seen many cartridges push 4,000 feet per second. And then some, apparently, if you got a nice chronograph and you can reload and you get some nice 35 grain projectiles, you're getting really close to 4,500 feet per second velocity. Guys, that is spanking fast. That is stupid fast. I mean, really fast. It's zooming. Like when your dog starts running with their butt tucked in, the zoomies, it's like that, but faster. It's ridiculous. Now, most of your like bullet weights are between 40 and 55 grains. Like that's the average, really, really common one. But man, even those, they're so flat shooting. Like they are really flat shooting, and flat shooting is an argument for another day, by the way, guys. That's its own topic, okay? It doesn't mean gravity doesn't work on it. It just means it's moving a further distance before gravity has time to take its effect on the projectile. Because it's still, you drop a coin and fire a bullet at the same time, they're going to hit the ground as long as it's unobstructed at the same time.
Yeah.
But that thing's going to move a lot further than a 9mm before it hits the ground. It's so fast. 4,000 is a lot. So, prairie dogs, really good for that, right? 4,000 feet per second. You could probably get away with 35 grain. 35 grain is probably good enough to take out prairie dogs if you got good shots. I never hunted prairie dogs, to be honest. So, I don't know what specialized ammo they like to use for those guys, but I would just imagine.
I mean, they're not here.
They're not really bulky animals either. It's not like you need a lot of mass. The ammo has always been really affordable. I've got a couple hundred rounds of 22-250 sitting in the room over there. And I'm one of those people whose grandfather handed down a 22-250 to. Now, I have to do some work to it, some gunsmithing to this thing to make it safe and accurate again. Because what you'll start to see when you get really fast cartridges or projectiles, they burn barrels out really bad. Yeah. The speed increases wear and tear. There are some like precision rifle cartridges that are out now for long range, competition. You're only getting 1,000 rounds out of it before you burn your barrel up, and your accuracy falls off substantially
Does it smooth it out at all?
Yeah, so you're eroding the rifling basically. And it's not just the rifling. Once again.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it's everything.
It's a lot. Yes, there's throat erosion, muzzle erosion, and then there's the rifling that you start to see a smoother bore, but you're losing accuracy over time by firing.
Yeah.
And with most cartridges, it's not a big deal.
If you're losing the rifling, you're going to lose the spin,
and it's not like I said,
lose the accuracy.
Rifling's weird. Rifling is actually an indentation.
Yeah.
So I don't exactly know what kind of barrel life you can expect out of a 22-250. I've never met anyone who shot 5,000 rounds out of a 22-250 because it's a varmint gun. You're not out there just shooting it all day, every day. So I don't know what kind of barrel life you can expect, and I could look into that if I needed to. But I imagine it's not very good because of the 4,000 feet per second. But it's such a small bullet. It may be fine. I don't know. Was that you?
What?
I thought I heard something.
Well, I mean, I moved my
Oh,
foot.
okay. I'm sorry. I thought I heard like a robot breaking into my house.
Oh, no.
It's a weird sound.
My foot moving against the chair.
Cool.
I'm sorry.
Cool. But I don't know. 4,000 feet per second is amazing. But my grandpa handed down a custom made Mauser. Honest to God, cannot figure out what country Mauser it is. I've tried really hard, and I can't find any identifying markings. They've all been like ground off. There's a serial number, kind of, that the gunsmith made. So nothing's original on the receiver. It's very hard to tell where it came from. But it's a Mauser action in 22-250 with a bull barrel that I'm going to probably rebarrel.
Yeah.
And I need to change the stock out for sure. But I think the only big downside of this cartridge outside of the gunpocalypse is the barrel life. I just can't imagine it's super high. But it's such a nice cartridge, man. Really tiny, really fast. Now that I'm thinking about it, all I want to do is go fix that gun now. I want to go shoot that thing some more because I got so much ammo just sitting there waiting to be shot.
Yeah.
All right. We have 2 more cartridges.
We do.
Caroline, what was your favorite gun that we had around the 2015, 2016 timeframe?
It was the little M1.
It was the M1. What did it shoot?
30 carbine.
30 carbine.
I love that thing.
That thing was awesome, right?
It's fantastic.
Guys, we bought a M1 carbine on our honeymoon.
Yeah.
On our honeymoon at a pawn shop.
We went to a pawn shop.
In Florida.
It was kind of a sketchy pawn shop, too. Like, it wasn't even a nice one.
No.
It was just one that we found.
That's a good find, though.
It was. It was just one that we found, like, on a back road somewhere.
Mm-hmm. We found a 1991, so not original, like World War II, but it's a 1991 50th anniversary Ivor Johnson M1 carbine that we picked up for $500.
Was it $5?
Yep, with
like
2 extra mags. It was $5.
Okay.
That's also another story, like how I lost that rifle. I sold it. Like, for being honest, I sold it for $800 some odd. I regret selling it though. I needed to fund another project. But that was
a fantastic little rifle.
That thing was amazing. It would fire whatever ammo you put through it.
Because it had never been shot when we got it.
It had never been shot. We bought it in 2013.
Yeah.
And it had never been fired before. Ever.
Mm-mm.
And it was made in 91. That thing was awesome. That thing was just one of the best M1 carbines I've ever used. So why do you think, now you take a guess, I know you've read the script, but do you think the 30 carbine cartridge is underrated?
I do.
Okay.
Because you just don't hear it often.
No. You hear people talk about M1 carbines, and you hear people complaining about M1 carbines.
That's true.
Which is stupid.
I just don't get into those arguments because I don't know enough to argue. I just know I had one, and it was fantastic, and I loved it. But I don't know enough to argue with somebody.
That's fair. That's a smart position to take. So
I'm just going to get sad and scroll past.
Aw, big sad.
Big sad.
The M1 carbine was meant to replace the 1911 for rear guard troops, like guys who weren't really in heavy combat on a regular basis. They kind of wanted it to be an in-between the M1 Garand and the 1911. So a pistol caliber, longer for a little more range, a little more accuracy, not this tiny 45. Not that 45 is tiny, but compared to the M1 carbine, you got a handgun versus a rifle or a carbine. So 30 carbine was introduced with the M1 carbine, and it's just a 30 caliber pistol cartridge, and it's very simple. Civilian market has loved the carbine for a long time. I'd say ever since World War II. I mean, I think the civilian gun market has really taken to the M1 carbine, as a fun rifle.
Yeah, no, it's really fun.
It's very fun. It's no recoil.
No.
I mean, it's a fun little plinking gun. The ammo was affordable.
Yeah.
Once again, it was really fun to shoot the M1 carbine, but a lot of gun snobs. Looking at you. A lot of gun snobs love to complain about the M1 carbine and its issues. So
they just like to complain about everything.
That's true, but they love to say, "Oh, the M1 carbine sucks," and they're not taking into account the fact that a lot of these M1 carbines they're getting their hands on can be, let's say, what is it, 80 years old now?
Yeah.
Ish, 80-ish years old now. All because, I mean, they're not taking that into account, right?
And not, super well taken care of.
Of course
'cause
not.
Not everybody takes care of their guns like
Yeah.
they should.
And a lot of the issues that come with the M1 carbines are actually from original magazines. The magazine life expectancy is very short.
Yeah. I mean, we had to get, I don't even think we could use the magazines that came,
No,
the magazine that came
not the one
with
that came
it.
with
Like,
it.
we
I had to
new
get.
ones.
I made them give us 3 more.
Yeah.
So the biggest issues was those, like, soldiers back then would take their, whenever they came back from, let's say, a mission or patrol or big firefights, they would drop off their used magazines and pick up new ones almost every time. So they always had new mags because they knew the mags were the issue. Keep new mags on, you won't have any issues.
Yeah. I mean, they were cheap little
Like
metal.
sheet metal.
Yeah.
Right. So
Rusty real quick.
but people see a lot of stuff from In-Range TV and other YouTube channels that I'm not exactly calling out, but
We're too small to call people
I mean, I'm too small to call people out, right? But I don't like the position they take without the thought process to put in it. I mean, and that's not saying they don't think. Like, In-Range TV makes fantastic videos. He does a lot of fantastic testing. I guarantee you he shoots more than I do. But when I've watched all of his videos and others who complain about the M1 carbine, I'm sitting there listening to him. I'm like, but you're not even attempting to bring up what the actual issue is.
Right.
Right? Like, the gun itself is fine. And you know, I'm gonna give the guy from In-Range TV some credit. It just seems like he has bad luck with M1 carbines. Because I'll watch his buddy Ian from Forgotten Weapons shoot the gun and have literally no issues, and he hands it to Carl from In-Range TV, and it immediately jams. Could just be like he's just got just been spurred by the carbine gods. But we never had any issues out of ours.
No, not at all.
No,
I don't even remember it jamming.
Not once did it ever jam. Now I can't prove that. Didn't film it. Don't still have it. So it's like an empty promise kind of thing. But we really never had any issues out of that specific M1 carbine. But we know the magazines had a lack of durability. So the 30 carbine gets less and less love from those people already because that's all that really shoots it. Now, I have seen some handguns, like custom handguns that shot 30 carbine, which is really cool. I've seen a revolver that shoots 30 carbine. It's really, really neat. But most things that shoot M1 carbine are M1 carbines.
Right.
That shoot 30 carbine are M1 carbines. I said...
I didn't even... I knew what you meant.
I think I said
you said
that shoot M1 carbine.
Yeah. Just shoot tiny M1 carbines.
Yeah, just miniature M1 carbine figurines coming out of the gun. So the 30 carbine, when it's fired out of an 18-inch barrel, which is the average length on an M1, is very comparable to a 357 Magnum lever action. Bullet performance, which is really interesting. Because 357 Magnum out of a lever action is really, really well performing. And depending on projectile choice, you get some better, some less. Yeah. When it comes to you don't have as big of a variety of projectile options for 30 carbine. There are a couple really, really interesting ones, but it's not like 357 Magnum and 9mm where there's like 3,000 different loads you can get for 30 carbine. There's a couple that are really, really interesting, and I'll get to those in a little bit. But with the few that have been tested, it's actually very comparable to 357 out of a lever action, but it's semi-automatic. And it's magazine based as opposed to tube fed, Yeah. So let's just keep that in mind for a second. It's handy, lightweight, and like we said, semi-automatic. And you can get some interesting self-defense loads. And this is where I want to go into why it's underappreciated. I think 30 carbine is underappreciated as a self-defense cartridge. Specifically. Okay. Not as a fun plinking gun. Yeah. But as a self-defense cartridge. You've got similar to 357 Magnum ballistics out of something like a lever action, which gives you a little more velocity than a pistol, right? But you're in a semi-auto gun with a couple. I'm gonna say there's probably 3 really good options for self-defense loads in 30 carbine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go ahead and skip to this part right now. I want to take a really crappy beat up M1 carbine that I don't have to feel bad about molesting, and I want to put it in a folding stock, like a folding polymer stock, or collapsing like an AR, with a rail at the front end. Take the iron sights off the front of the barrel. Probably put a new barrel in there. That way, it's like a brand new, accurate barrel. And then put a red dot on it, and a suppressor and a flashlight. I want to make a home defense 30 carbine. The red dot, flashlight, suppressor, 30 carbine.
I mean,
that sounds so fun. No one, not a human being in the world, not one soul would ever break into a house expecting to see a suppressed, modern, modular 30 carbine or M1 carbine.
Who's gonna recognize it though? Like,
I'm telling you right now,
that guy's got an M1 carbine. I gotta go. This
that
guy's crazy.
Of course he's crazy. Look what he did to that poor thing. But I just think it would be so fun, even to take to the range. But it would be very handy for
a suppressor on an M1 carbine.
Think about that. People take 22. What are they? I'm sorry. I'm blanking out right now. Ruger 1022s. Mm-hmm. The takedown models. Put them in backpacks. How about a folding stock suppressed M1 carbine in a backpack?
Just suppressed M1 carbine is just making me laugh right now.
It doesn't sound right, does it?
It doesn't at all.
It doesn't sound right at all. It'd be so fun, though. I mean, I can't imagine how fun that would be. No recoil. Really cool. Oh, my gosh. I want to do it so bad now.
It would actually be like
I'm
the
so
movies.
broke. I know. It would be very close. So, Hornady. Actually, let's go back a little bit. No, yeah. Hornady has a critical defense load for the 30 carbine in about 110 grain projectile. And the critical defense is not bad ammunition. Mm-hmm. I think it can be hit or miss with expansion. I've seen a couple stories of live firefights or live shootouts where the Hornady critical defense specifically did not expand reliably.
What's the other one that they make?
Critical duty.
That's it. Okay.
I mean, they make a couple different ones, but those two are the big ones.
I was
for
thinking
Hornady.
of that one, but I was thinking it was also defense and it was something else. But yeah.
And I would think you'd want critical duty in 30 carbine because I feel like you'd be shooting out of a longer barrel, and a lot of times the critical duty expands better with a higher velocity. At least that's what they say. But you also have, let's see. So this next load isn't marketed as a self-defense load, but I'm telling you right now, it will 100% work as a self-defense load. Look me in the eye. It will 100% work as a self-defense load. Lehigh Defense's Extreme Cavitator. 85 grains. A cavitator. 85 grain projectiles. It's pretty, I mean, all in all, it's a pretty lightweight compared to the 110 grain. When you Google this, you will look at it and go, yes, this can do the job of a self-defense load. I 100% promise you that.
I just cavitator.
Cavitator. Lehigh Defense Extreme Cavitator 85 grain. I'm not sponsored by anyone. I have 6 subscribers. So hopefully this video doesn't age well. He's like, 6. He's got like 10 million. That'd be nice. But it's YouTube and gun stuff, so doubt it. So if you combine all these factors in with the fact that it's low recoil, handy rifle, I mean, I'll give people some credit. Like if they don't plan on doing a full like kit loadout on an M1 carbine, you got iron
Most
sights,
people don't.
and it's not like middle of the night iron sights, not good, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's underappreciated. I think the cartridge itself is underappreciated for self-defense. I think if you would find a way to get a 30 carbine in a folding backpack gun or a handgun, I think that would be an amazing self-defense cartridge, especially in the Lehigh Defense Extreme Cavitator 85 grain. Take me serious when I say that. Go Google it. Lehigh Defense's Extreme Cavitator 85 grain. I promise you, it will work. Promise you. I'm not sponsored either.
Cavitator.
No.
Lehigh Defense?
No.
No?
No, Lehigh Defense Cavitator.
Okay.
Extreme Cavitator. Sorry. There you go. Silly woman. Okay, last cartridge on the list. 6.5 by 55 Swede.
See, this is one of the ones that I had never heard of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've heard of the Swiss rounds, but Swede, no.
Yep. So 6.5 by 55 Swede has been around, oh my gosh, since, I think it's 120 plus years. I think it was like the 1890s when it was first invented. Now, it didn't have the Spitzer pointed bullets. They were more round, you know. It didn't have the best powder like it does now, but the idea of 6.5 by 55 Sweet has been around since the late 1800s.
Yeah.
It's the oldest cartridge on this list by far. Is really popular for a short while. In competition shooting, I think in the Northwest, Europe and parts of North America really, really liked 6.5 by 55 Swede for competition shooting, which is really weird because the competition shooting that happened back then is a lot different than now. But the people who like knew about 6.5 by 55 Swede and actually used it loved it. You're fine. You can just yawn all you want. No one even heard you until you said something. It was just a camera. People who are watching on YouTube, thank you for that, by the way. Thanks for watching. They saw it, and they were judging you heavily. Thanks for the vibrating phone, too.
I'm sorry.
That's
why I've been
really
holding
professional. Why didn't you turn it off?
I tried.
Okay, so we just can't figure out phones nowadays?
Nope, I had to update. I don't know how to use
All
this
right, I will
anymore.
fire this pregnant woman and hire another one. Don't worry. Hopefully I don't have to impregnate that other woman. That'd be awful. 2 pregnant women? Ugh. What was it? You made me lose my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
Anyways, the cartridge was loved by people who knew about it and used it. But for those people who, like, outside of that group, nobody knew who it was or what it was or how it came to be or what it did or anything. So 120 plus years old. Lots of ammunition development and R&D has happened over those 120 years. So it's changed.
Yeah.
The measurements are
of course
supposedly the same,
yeah.
but it's changed a lot over time. So it was good for hunting and some competition in Europe. Some parts, I'm going to specify some parts of North America. It's a European cartridge, Swede.
Yeah.
But it did find a small niche in North America for a little while. But it's flown under the radar for a good while now because of all these other long-range competition cartridges like 6.5 Creedmoor, 6.5 PRC. All these different cartridges have really overshadowed 6.5 Swede, and I think that they shouldn't be. I think 6.5 Swede deserves a whole nother look into it as a modern and capable cartridge, which is surprising. You don't normally say that for any cartridges over 100 years old.
Yeah.
Except for 45, shut your mouth. 45 is still capable. That's the fanboy in me coming out.
Yeah.
I know 45 is definitely overrated or outdated, but I still love it. But see, I'll admit both. Okay. I'm getting like thirsty now, and it's just, slowing down. But long-range cartridges, 6.5 Creedmoor, 6.5 PRC, they're really reliable at 1,000 yards. But so is this one. So a lot of people in the early 2000s, very early 2000s, it was one of the most popular calibers in multiple North American competitions out to 1,000 yards. People were finding very reliable and consistent accuracy out to 1,000 yards. And obviously a lot of this is hand loads, but it's the same cartridge. Like, it's 6.5 by 55 Swede. And they were consistently doing 1,000-yard shots with it, winning competitions. And that's with a 120-year-old plus cartridge. With the new precision cartridges that have taken over, it's still, I don't feel like explaining ballistic coefficient right now because that's really technical. Yeah. And I'm not the best person to explain that. Like, I know what it is, but I don't think I would get the message across properly unless I spent a week researching and really writing to my thoughts. But just know that ballistic coefficient, you want a good ballistic coefficient. Let's just put it that way. 6.5 55 Swede has a really outstanding ballistic coefficient, even by modern standards. And that's, once again, really interesting for a 100-something-year-old cartridge to be that good without, there's a big range of projectile choices from like 100 grain to 160 grain. So a big 60 grain range of projectile weights. There may be more outside of that, lighter or heavier, but I have not seen anything below 100 or above 160, maybe 165. Is
there anybody who actually competes with that?
Not that I know of right now. I mean, no, everything now is 6.5 PRC, 6mm arc, 6.5 arc, 6.5 Creedmoor, 6mm Creedmoor. It's all, and it's still in the 6.5 range. People are loving this. Between 6 and 6.5 millimeters has really taken off, and there's dozens of new wildcats of 6mm or 6.5mm, just different cases and neck angles and powder chart and all this stuff is just different. So 6.5 seems to be really well. A lot of European countries liked 6.5 for a good while. And there's still some rifle options you can currently get in 6.5 Swede, which really surprised me because I was doing research for this and I was wondering if you could still buy modern, like brand new, like 2020 or 2021 rifles in 6.5 Swede, and you can. I'm going to give you a couple options. The CZ 5.57 American.
Or CZ.
CZ's cool.
Yeah.
CZ just loves doing things that their fans like, and I respect that. Unlike some companies who ignore their fans for 30 years.
Oh, CZ's a good company.
Yeah, they're really good. And the 5.57 American is actually a really nice rifle. Their bolt actions are underappreciated. We'll do a whole other thing on that. CZ's bolt actions are really smooth, really, really solid bolt actions.
A lot of CZ stuff is kind of...
Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started on CZ. We'll do a whole new episode. There's a bunch of Sauer rifles, like Sig Sauer, but just the Sauer. There's a lot of... I'm not going to name them all, but there's a lot of Sauer rifles that you can get in 6.5 Swede. The Seiko 85 Finlight 2, and there's a couple others that I gave you like 3 really good options. The Seikos are awesome rifles. CZ's bolt actions are really good, and Sauer rifles are almost all really good. If you're looking for a modern 6.5 Swede, those are some options I recommend. I've met a couple reloaders in America here in South Carolina that I've met personally who are just reloading 6.5 Swede. Having a lot of fun with it, getting a lot of really good accuracy out to range. They're not competing, but they're just doing it for themselves, and they're trying to fine-tune their rifles, you know. A couple of those guys wanted me to build them custom bolt actions in 6.5 Swede because I guess they're running through barrels, or I don't know. I don't know what their reason was, but I mean, I'd love to do it. And while I'm at it, I'll just buy an extra barrel and make myself a 6.5 Swede.
There you go.
I want to do a Seiko one, though. So it's lightweight. And, you know, when you compare it to other, like, 160 grains, not that heavy when you compare it to things that are like in the 180, 190 grain. But they're getting really good groupings. These reloaders are getting really good groupings with whatever their preferred cartridge or projectile weight is. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming it's the heavier end. But I really want to make I'm thinking a Ruger Mark 77 instead of a Seiko. A Ruger Mark 77 in 6.5 Swede, I think would be really fun. Like a lightweight one for hunting as opposed to like long range competition. I think the Mark 77 with a fluted barrel, lightweight stock, I think that'd be fun. Fun little build, like a little mountain rifle, you know, something that you don't want really heavy because ammo is really good for that. I wouldn't take really, really long shots, but if you're hiking to get to your target and maybe it's 200 yards away, I think with certain lows, this one could do it. But that's all. That's all 5 cartridges.
Folks.
Hopefully you guys agree with some of the ones that I said were underrated. If you disagree, please let us know in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. Caroline would actually appreciate it because she's actually a nice person despite, you know, how she acted on this podcast today with her phone vibrating. Just the most unprofessional person I've ever worked with.
One time.
One time?
One time.
That's one time too many.
I'm so sorry.
You're a bad person. You should feel bad.
Apologize greatly. I'll make an apology.
Okay. Well, if you comment and say Caroline's a bad person, she will have to apologize to you in the comments. I'm making that right now. It's happening. So, if you guys want to find us elsewhere, you can find my Instagram, TBR Gunworks, or you can find my Parler, which is also TBR Gunworks. Caroline, would you like to plug your Instagram, or do you care?
Mine's private. Okay,
well, I care because I'm running a business here. TBR Gunworks on Instagram and Parler. Twitter I have not done yet because I really hate Twitter. Like, I really hate Twitter. But website should be launching as well very soon. Hopefully by the time the next episode comes out, the website will be live.
The next few days.
It probably will be live by the next episode. TBRgunworks.com. Very simple. TBR, Tango, Bravo, Romeo, Gunworks.com. I'd like to have that up before next Sunday. I mean, today is the 3rd. It is 7:30 p.m. at night on a Sunday, the 3rd. And the next episode, unfortunately, we'll have to wait until 4 p.m. Or I guess it's early, not waiting, but it's coming out a couple hours early next Sunday as opposed to 6:30. I want to do a consistent 6:30 Sunday nights. That's what I want this podcast to be. So if you guys could like, subscribe. I hate doing that, but I'm telling you right now, I've done my research. If I don't ask, It's a big difference. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you enjoyed the content. The content's going to be all over the place, all firearms related. We're going to have guests. I promise you right now, before the end of the year, I will have at least 2 big guests on this show.
Big?
I'm telling you, I'm putting it out in the world. I know for a fact I can convince one of them by the end of the year. The other one, I think he's so close by, it would just be like a really easy like argument. Like, come on, dude, you're like 30 minutes away. Just come to my house and do the podcast. Like, just we've already talked a couple times. Just come on, let's do it. I want to have a couple big guests on the podcast before the end of the year, and I would like this to grow and to serve the viewers. So if you guys have ideas or topics that you want covered, please let us know in the comments, because I will write them down. I promise you, if I see a good idea, it will get written down in my podcast list, and we may cover it. And if we do cover it, I will give you credit for offering the idea. I will mention in the podcast that you gave me the idea in the comments, and you will get credit. We are going to go now to any live questions that we have, because we are recording this live in front of a not live studio audience. It's an internet audience. And if they have any questions, we will answer them. If you want to take part in the live Q&A, you're going to have to come to the YouTube channel and watch when the episodes come out live, because we don't pre-record these. We record these live in front of people, and then it will get uploaded to YouTube as a video, and then podcast sites as audio. So if you're interested in asking something live, you got to come and be here. So thanks for listening, guys. So thanks for watching. If you're on YouTube watching the VOD, we really appreciate it. This has been the Ready Room podcast by TBR Gunworks. I'm Josh.
I'm Caroline.
And we appreciate you. Have a great night. Stay bearded.